quick agenda on what we're going to go through today. Start with a quick introduction to Specright, especially for those of you that have never spoken with us before. Then a short demo of the primary features of the Specright platform, just to get everybody acquainted with what powers the new features. And then the bulk of the time will be spent showcasing those new features. We'll start off with the Printable view PDF builder. We'll jump into IQ, which I know everybody's excited to see what we're doing with artificial intelligence. We'll get into the Supplier Scorecard and then curtail that into the vendor lookup. Wanted to first note that our CEO, Matthew, wanted to join. He's very excited about everybody being here. He's traveling for a customer call, but he wanted to make sure I pointed out that with these new features, these tools are literally saving our customers millions of dollars on their packaging. Matthew's background is on the supplier side of packaging, and so he definitely can see it from both sides of the coin. And IQ itself is consistently identifying double-digit % savings that's helping both the purchasers as well as the makers of packaging. One customer found over $2 million in savings on a $25 million annual corrugated spend. And so just some numbers to keep in mind as we're going through this. I'm going to jump over real quick to the chat, just to make sure that everybody can hear. Looks like the audio is good. So quick background on Specright. So one thing that is unique about our software platform and company is that we really brought in all perspectives to build this packaging specification database. Specright holds packaging, ingredients, formulas, finished goods, really any type of specification that it takes to make, ship, procure a product. But the core is packaging. And so our founder, many of our executives have quite a bit of experience in the packaging industry, but then we brought in technology experts, academics with the Cal Poly San Luis Obispo packaging program, and then got a lot of input from the makers of packaging themselves. Ultimately, our customer base, the majority is the purchasers of packaging, but certainly we have many users and customers that are also the makers of packaging, and really anybody in the ecosystem can benefit from Specright. The Specright platform itself is built on the Salesforce App Cloud. For those of you that are familiar with Salesforce, it's the largest cloud-based software platform in the world. I'm sure other departments and many of your companies use it. The primary benefits of being built on Salesforce are that there's already an international infrastructure in place. It's cloud-based, so you can access it from any device, including a mobile app. There are also pre-built configurations for integrations, so it makes it much easier to connect with your ERP or PLM or MRP or other systems. Definitely happy to answer more questions on the foundation of Specright at the end. A sampling of some of our customers. We're really working with purchasers and producers of packaging across all industries. As you can see here, there are examples from food and beverage, cosmetics, CPG, automotive, and definitely a lot of manufacturing industries. With that, I'm going to jump over to the product demo because I think that is what everybody's much more interested in. So you should see my screen now with two Specright logos and a picture of our founder, Matthew. So this is Specright. You'll see a handful of different screens as we're going through. And one thing to keep in mind is that what you're seeing right now is the classic view of Specright. We also have a new release that will be on Salesforce Lightning and so some of the features you'll see in that. As I said before, the core of Specright is the individual specifications, especially packaging. And so I'll click here into a sample corrugated spec. This is a shipper, specifically an RSC, and on this page you can store any details that you want of the particular item. All these fields are flexible. You can store any files, whether that be a PDF, an RDOS CAD file, an EPS, or AI drawing, and you'll get thumbnail previews of any PDFs, image, or Word document that you can then click into to view the full file, download, etc. I won't go into detail on the additional sections, but you can see logistics details, a list of everywhere this particular item is used. You can have sub-specifications for suppliers. You can input quality records. You can execute workflows and approvals, and a history of everything is logged. Those of you that have seen Specright before, I'm sure are familiar with all of these. For simplicity's sake today, we're going to focus on corrugated packaging, but as I click over to a sample bottle spec, you'll see that the attributes change. Once again, over to a flexible specification, they change as well. So these can be modified to your needs. We have pre-built templates for about 30 different items. The last piece to touch on before getting into the new features is the analytics of Specright. So here you can see a project overview. There's also some quality dashboards in here, and then a summary of reports on various aspects of your packaging. The analytics are definitely a major differentiator between Specright and other systems. So that's kind of a high-level overview of the specification management portion. Certainly having the specs inside of Specright, as well as the bill of materials and finished goods that they roll up to, is a lot of what drives the power of these new features. So the first new feature I'm going to touch on is the Printable View or PDF Builder. So to orient ourselves, I'm going back to the C200 shipper, and there's a button here for a specification report. So when I click on specification report, what this is going to do is create a custom PDF based on your desired template, including your logo, formatting, and the pieces of the specification that you want to include. So I'll open up this PDF, and you'll see that it dynamically pulls the details and data points that are in that specification, as well as any attachments. So we certainly encourage you to share the digital version with your suppliers or customers or internal stakeholders, but there are always going to be situations where you need a printed out specification or you need a PDF to send around. And so this is an easy way to create that, but it's created dynamically. So if you change one of these data points, if the length goes from 11 to 12, then the next time that you run that specification report, you'll get the updated version. This can also be done on the finished good level. So here I see all the finished goods that use this particular shipper. I'm going to click into the apple blueberry granola, and then I'll do the same thing. So in this case, when I run the report, it's going to pull not only the details of the finished good, but it'll also pull the bill of materials, and if needed, the files from those individual items. So I'll open up this apple blueberry granola. You'll see the first page has the finished good details. The second page has the specific details of the corrugated shipper that's connected with, a pallet pattern, etc. So that's a quick preview of the Printable View PDF Builder. Once again, happy to dive into more detail on any of these on individual calls later on. I'm now going to jump over to IQ, and actually before I show that in more detail, I'll kind of set the table with a report. So once your data is in Specright, in the past you've been able to run analytics on that, run reports, and really see different aspects, see different areas of your specifications aggregated. But what we've layered on top of that is some artificial intelligence that rather than you having to do the analysis, the computer's doing it in the background. So we've taken the best known cost savings ideas, starting with corrugated, then we'll roll out to our next most common commodity amongst customers, which is flexible packaging, and then on from there. And what it does in this corrugated example, so in this demo account, you can see all these specifications and a handful of the details and attributes of those specs. So what IQ is doing is in the background, it's taking a look at all of those and seeing which are applicable to these various IQ cost savings ideas. On the IQ tab, you'll see there are 3 examples here. The first is shifting from white to craft. If you click on that, you can see a summary of what that change is and why it's going to save you money, as well as an estimate of the cost savings. Going back to the IQ page, as long as you have your purchasing data inside of Specright, it'll automatically identify the potential cost savings by making that change across all the specifications that could be done with. The other examples here are C flute to B flute, as well as shifting from Mullen to ECT grade. Obviously, with all of these recommendations from IQ, you're going to have to take a look at them, make sure that they're not changing anything that you don't want changed, but this will give you the maximum potential savings, and then you can go into any of those actual specifications, or you can create a report of all of them, and you can share that spec directly with, in this case, let's say you want to send it to one of your suppliers that runs this item. So you want to send it to Peter Walker at Acme, and you can ask them for a quote or say, can we change this RSC from white to craft, or tell them whatever it may be. And then this will send an email to Peter with a link to come in, view the spec, and then you guys can have dialogue on whether the change can be made. So it's not only giving you the recommendation proactively, but it's also actionable immediately. So we're very excited about IQ. As we said before, one customer has already found over $2 million in potential savings on a $25 million annual corrugated spend. I'm now going to jump over to the Supplier Scorecard. So you'll see here that the view has changed a bit. So we are in the Lightning version of Spec right now, and I'm going to refresh this. So the Supplier Scorecard, which is a beta version currently, has 4 different elements that it measures. And really the goal of this is to create a way for the buyers of packaging and the makers of packaging to have a single point of truth. And so the 4 elements that we've started with are quality, delivery, initiatives, so whether those are cost initiatives or sustainability initiatives that you have an agreement with a supplier or with a customer, and then lastly, cost and price movement over time. And if we go back up to the top here, you'll see that on the left side, these are individual data points. So in March of 2017, this particular vendor had 3,000 parts per million that were defects or non-conformances. On the right side is a year-to-date trend. So you can see over time how is a particular supplier trending. And once again, this is meant to be a benefit for both sides, so that rather than just having an annual or a quarterly review, you can see in relatively real time the performance from both sides and work together to improve that throughout the year. As I go down to the initiative section, if you're already in September and the initiatives is still at a 0, then obviously, you're behind the times, need to kick that into gear. Any of these points can be, debated, agreed to between the two sides, but it'll give you real-time insight into that. Right now, the data entry for this is a manual form, but the future versions will pull in data not only from your specifications and your supplier records and customer records inside of Specright, but also could connect with other systems to get those data points, such as the delivery. The final feature that I'm going to showcase, and then would love to open it up for questions, is VX, or our vendor lookup. So what we found, and definitely Matthew and others here know from their 25+ years of experience, is that finding suppliers is very manual, and typically word of mouth is the #1 driver for finding those suppliers. Whatever the method is of finding a new supplier, it often takes makers of packaging 3 to 5% of revenue just to find those customers. So this leads to increased prices, decreased efficiency. So what we've done is created an easier way to link the purchasers and buyers of packaging together. So this is a location-driven search. So let's say that I want to find suppliers in New Jersey. Then I'll search for that, and it'll return within a particular distance all suppliers. Of this case, it's corrugated items. I could switch to flexible if I want to, and then I'm going to look in Fresno, California, and in Fresno, it'll return all the potential flexible suppliers in that area. There will be a direct link to contact the supplier. At this point, we are filling the database with current users of Specright and gathering the information ourselves. The detail that it'll get into in future states will enable you to look at not only suppliers based on location, but you can go directly from a specification and say, hey, I need to find a new supplier in this area that can run a 5-color job on this particular flexible bag, and it'll tell you which suppliers in that area can do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to questions.